construction and estimate the temple had to be completed after many decades or centuries. However, according to scientific reports, it took less than 18 years to finish the construction of the temple. It was estimated that 60 tons of rocks were being removed every day during the temple's construction phase. It's believed temple workers labored for 12 hours a day, fully figured out available during the period, baffled at the scope. Built these spectacular caves thousands of years ago definitely had more advanced tools than ordinary chisels and picks. The Kailasa Temple is part of a complex of 34 monuments which span over an area of Laura caves carved out from a basalt. The temple has a height of 98 feet, was 109 feet wide, and 64 feet. This makes it possibly one of the biggest known structures of its kind on the planet. Which truly Micronesian island of Pohnpei, there exists a native stone known as the Venice of the Pacific. Up till today, it's not known how Nan Madol, which is made up of massive stone blocks, was constructed, since none of the peoples living in the area had been known to possess the required organization or knowledge to pull off such a feat. Because it's believed to be inaccessible and haunted, but now new images of the ruins, caught on camera by satellite, goes to local legends. It might be the Atlantis of the Pacific. According to it was a political and religious center, yet home and cemetery to the first ruling elite class. It was discovered in 1928, and now, thanks to the modern technology available, scientists were able to explore it in more detail. New astounding images from above led them to composed of 97 small channels of water in AD. The satellite images 750 metric tons of black rock were used to build such majestic structures. It would be still wonder how this ancient civilization could do that, like the Egyptians did with the pyramids.
Hey, baby. How are you? I'll just call them City. Also, if you go to your phone's got a software update today. 50% charge for it to happen. And if you pull up YouTube and you look up Spectre Distribution, the kids are playing. I got them online. So go to YouTube and then type in Spectre DIST. And then once you do that, you'll see the little window that says 2 5-week-old kittens. Is the title, but they are just going off right now. I just cleaned them up, cleaned the cage, fed them, gave them water, putting the proof out. Yay! And yeah, they're busy playing right now. You can tune in and watch them. They're going ballistic. I mean ballistic. So I'll let you back up. It's not the same link that I sent you, but your phone. Oh, and they're trying to fucking scale his way out. Ninja, no. All right, go. I love you. Bye. Ninja, get down. Ninja, get down. Get down. Get down. Let go. Thank you.
Local legend says that one of the salt holders were shipped from the other side of the island using rafts, while palm tree trunks were used to leverage them in the right position. What do you believe? We can't really be sure it's the real Atlantis, but the mystery continues. Fireballs low during the night. This made it an untouchable, scary place people prefer to go to only during the day. All these islets are remote and geometrically shaped, but the reason is still unclear. And another question arises: did they build the city in such a remote place, in the middle of nowhere? 1814, 200 men crossed the lush Canoe plains of central Java, choking vegetation. They cleared away tons of volcanic ash. Hidden beneath the debris, they find strange figures carved in stone, thousands of them. They had just discovered Borobudur, one of the greatest temples on Earth. The temple is the second largest Buddhist temple after Angkor Wat Temple in Cambodia, and would not be out of place as a new wonder of the world. There are several versions of the origin of the name of this temple. The first version says that the name comes from the Bedor, which means high or above. The second version says that the name Borobudur is likely to come from the word Semhara Butara, which means mountain slope terraces. The third version is interpreted by Professor Dr. Hora Borchiroko. He explained that the word Borobudur comes from Bohoro, which means monastery or dorm, and Budur, which means above. When we see the reality of and why this temple was built, how was it possible to pile up thousands of stone blocks to create such a magnificent knowledge of sophisticated tools and equipment? How did they carve the thousands of reliefs to produce a work of art? The temple has 9 platforms, of which the lower 6 have a and the rest are circular. The upper platforms of the temple were built with 72 small stupas surrounding a larger one. Each stupa has the shape of a bell and is decorated with different holes. There is a Buddha statue in each stupa. Whoever built this temple used cubic meters of stones. This is without a doubt a monumental building that cannot be fully comprehended unless seen in the flesh. With the temple in decay, a restoration was carried out between 1907 and 1911, using the principles of anastylosis and led by Theodore Van Erp. Van Erp dismantled and rebuilt the upper 3 circular. Along the way, Van Erp discovered
Wow, that's a lot of nobodies. Newsflash, not all refugees are welcome here.
This is just another moment in this presidency where I thank God he's the president of the United States and Hillary Clinton is not.
Almost 8,000 black people are murdered every year in this country. It's not by cops, it's by other black people.
discovered more things he could do to improve the monument. He submitted another proposal, which was approved with the additional cost of to its old glory. Many attempts have been made to uncover the mystery surrounding the temple since its discovery. When was the construction of Borobudur begun? When was the original foot of the temple covered and replaced by a platform for processions? When was the temple completed? To which no definite answers have yet been given. These are just some of the mysteries from our remote past that remain unsolved today. We hope that one day these mysteries will be solved so we can find out more about the history of the planet that we live on.
Yes, I'm epic.
The idea of a lost but highly civilization has captured the interest of people for centuries. Perhaps the most compelling of these tales is the story of Atlantis. The story appears again and again in books, television shows, and movies. When it comes to questions regarding the actual physical location of the fabled lost civilization of Atlantis, the answers usually depend on with whom you're speaking. Everyone seems to have a favorite candidate for when a convincing case can be made, whether in Antarctica or the Aegean, Bahamas or the North Atlantic, be everywhere, and sorting it all out can be confusing. So let's take a look at some of the more plausible locations. One of the suggested places for Atlantis is around the Azores Islands, a group of islands located about 900 miles west of the Portuguese coast. Some people believe the islands could be the mountaintops of Atlantis. The vast extent of the islands defines an immense exclusive economic zone of 1,100,000 square kilometers. The westernmost point of this area
1,380 kilometers from the North American continent. All the islands have volcanic origins, although some, such as Santa Maria, have had no recorded activity since the islands were settled. Mount Pico on the island of Pico is the highest point in Portugal at 2,351 meters. The Azores are some of the tallest mountains on the planet, measuring from their base at the bottom of the ocean to their peaks, which thrust high above the surface of the Atlantic. A small number of earthen structures carved into rocks that would produce burials have been identified on the islands of Corvo, Santa Maria, that they might date back 2,000 years, alluding to a human presence on the island before the Portuguese. Detailed examinations is lacking. 18th century Portuguese colonization. In addition to many theories, myths, and stories written about the Azores, there have been various Genoese and Catalan maps produced since 1358 that identified islands in the Atlantic. Some chroniclers noted that sailors knew the islands and visited them during return voyages from the Canary Islands, about 1340 to 1340, during the reign of King Afonso IV. In History of the Azores by Thomas Ashe, written in 1813, the author identified a Fleming, Joshua van der Berg of Bruges, who made land in the archipelago during a storm on his way to Lisbon. Ashe then claimed the Portuguese explored the area and claimed it for Portugal shortly after. Other stories note the discovery of the first islands, São Miguel Island, Santa Maria Island, and Terceira Island, were made by sailors in the service of Henry the Navigator, although there are few written documents to support the claims. Supporting the official history of the islands are latter-day writings based on oral tradition that appeared in the first half of the legends and myths also developed Nadas, the Fortunate Islands, the Ilhas Azuis, the Blue Islands, the Ilhas Cassiterides, the Islands of Tin and Silver, or Ilhas de Sete Cidades, the Islands of the Seven Cities, all noting the knowledge of undiscovered lands in the middle of the Atlantic. Officially, the first islands were discovered in the 15th century, in 1431, by Goncalo Velo Cabral, a captain in the service of Infante de Henrique, although credit is also given to explorer Diogo de Selves in 1427. Number 2, Sahara. The Eye of the Sahara would be the most mysterious thing on Earth. Located in an isolated area of the Sahara Desert in Mauritania, the Eye of the Sahara is not what can be called a structure. It's instead a vast circular formation. Initially, it assumed to be a hole in the surface, but the recent photographs taken by astronauts sent from space suggest that it's not a crater, but a result of erosion that happened in geological time. The Eye of Sahara is also known as the Richet structure, which is a bit oval and deeply eroded in the Sahara Desert. The size of this place, Sahara, Mauritania, is 50 kilometers wide, and the erosion has created several coil formations, illustrated by 3 rings dunking outward from the Richet structure. The Eye of Sahara was so big, but not discovered until the astronauts saw it from space. People also called the Eye of the Sahara by the name Blue Eye of Africa, because in some of the images taken by NASA, the structure looked blue. No one till date has been able to find out the reason behind the formation of such concentric rings in the middle of the desert. Since the formation is of circular and not too oval, Some theorize that it formed due to an asteroid strike, but this
What a
theory
big girl,
particularly
Asuna.
suggested that the
Wow.
in the formation of the
Asuna.
and due to the lack of evidence of any igneous rock in that place, this theory didn't seem to work. Another perspective is that concentric rings of the Eye of Sahara are of equal distance.
And put it back on them and move on and just go back to your normal monthly routine. The dog's voice protects you.
It was human-based. Many people still think that the Eye of the Sahara is the doomed city of Atlantis, though Plato's description of Atlantis does give an exact impression of the formation of the Richat structure. Plato says a round divided into circles of land and water. Sail was preventing any movement to happen, which made it harder for any sailor to cross the city from any part of the ocean. Atlantis in Greek stands for the island of Atlas. Plato also as the city of Atlantis. Stated like Plato's description, it's still an exciting way to look into this theory. There's so much to learn, but due to the inaccessibility and lack of researchers, this place hasn't been much attention. Hopefully in the future we get access to this place and find regarding the actual reason for the formation of or the Richat structure. It's said that thousands of years ago, a sequential number of cataclysmic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions crushed a chain of mountains that once joined Europe and Africa together, pillars of Hercules. The ocean water disintegrated the lower land that once existed under the Mediterranean Sea. By time, the ocean water settled and the Mediterranean Sea was created. Obviously, the higher land surface flood islands were formed. Thus, this new basin, which came into being and which separated the two great continents, became an area of warfare and conflicts among the powerful maritime nations. This great catastrophe separated Malta also from the mainland, and thus Maltese islands were formed. Now, according to Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, another catastrophic eruption occurred, and the islands of Atlantikos was submerged under the sea in the span of a single day and night. From ancient times, several scholars have written about the existence of Atlantica, but unfortunately never found its exact location. For the last 2 centuries, this mysterious island confused hundreds of scientists and researchers through their findings. In Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, we find a clear description of what remains. It describes the remains of this once great city as the skeleton of a body due to its scattered remains on several small islands. Note that it only indicates a group of islands and not part of a continent. Everyone agrees that when Plato, together with Crantor, visited the Sais in Egypt and saw the story of Atlantica, it remains in the Western Ocean, what is now referred to as the Mediterranean Sea. His visit to Egypt reaffirmed that Solon's manuscript, Atlantikos, written some 200 years before, was a historical fact and not myth. In 1854, Giorgio Grognet, the renowned Maltese architect, claimed that the Maltese Islands are the remnants of Atlantide. This assertion came after intense research about this enigmatic island, which seemed already a controversial subject at this time. The theory that the Maltese Islands in ancient times formed part of a larger island known as Atlantide is gaining acceptance among world-renowned scholars and researchers on the subject. The fact that on the Maltese Islands we find several ancient temples, 2 Gantija, 1 in Najra, Hagarkin, and the Hypogean at Tarkson, proves that these ancient remains are more than a mere evidence that an advanced technological civilization settled in Malta about 8,000 years ago. But more than that, the fact that Malta is not so distant from Greece, and that the Maltese Islands, together with the volcanic islands of Pantelleria and Lampedusa, fall exactly into the description given by Plato, shows that these islands are part of the country left floating in the central Mediterranean to bear witness of Atlantis. There are those who think that if this theory is proved scientifically, then Malta can surely be referred to as the cradle of
I'm not standing, Jim. Sorry. Okay.
Off the coast of Bimini, under crystal blue waters, lie ancient stone formations. Many believe that the mysterious road paid numerous expeditions of explorers, geologists, archaeologists,
A lot of nobodies. Newsflash, not all refugees are welcome here.
This is just another moment in this presidency where I thank God he's the president of the United States and Hillary Clinton is not.
Almost 8,000 black people are murdered every year in this country. And it's not by cops, it's by other black people.
and scientists have been off the coast of Bimini to explore the underwater question whether the limestone blocks are a natural phenomenon or a man-made evidence of an ancient lost civilization. Bimini is one of the Bahamian islands east of Miami, Florida. Just 20 feet from the coast, large flat stones, cut at right angles, were deliberately laid in a straight line. The origin and purpose of the Bimini Road remains an unsolved mystery. The name Bimini is found in the ancient Egyptian language and means homage to Min. Min was the divine patron of the Egyptians and Muslims. After an aeroplane discovered a mysterious underwater formation, many divers rushed to the area, announced the discovery of paved roads or stone walls. Further studies revealed the existence of two rock formations. The first is almost parallel to the road. The study of rocks allowed us to date the age of the rocks is 10,000 BC. After this discovery, some researchers were starting to link it with the prediction. In 1938, Edgar Cayce predicted that Atlantis, or part of the temples, would rise from under seawater in Bimini. It will be 1968 or 1969. Bimini Road was discovered in 1968, and many perceived this as the fulfillment of the prediction by Cayce on lost mathematician Plato. His record on the continent, cursed by the gods and fell out of favor, is written as a parable that the arrogance and abuse of power can lead to the death of. What if ancient advanced civilization did exist, water, and was lost to history? All over the world, different people have suffered terrible disasters: tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. Perhaps Atlantis is fate. An American TV channel conducted its own investigation and made a documentary about the underwater formations and their connection with the search for the lost city of Atlantis. A team of divers under the first layer of stones found a second layer. This gave grounds to assume that the Bimini Road is the up part of a wall or part of an ancient structure. Number 5, Canary Islands. So, what do we know about Atlantis? It was an island, probably small but close enough for its ships to pass the Straits of Gibraltar and enter the Mediterranean. Its civilization was the end of the last ice age. Later, it had significant trade with other nations. It was probably volcanic. It was destroyed by an earthquake. We faithfully followed this description. They're volcanic, on the ancient but disputed trade route to the Americas, were once more fertile today, are still unstable, and have unusual ruins. Reports that Canary Islands were uninhabited in the time of Hanno the Navigator, circa 600 BC, but nevertheless the ruins of buildings. All of the evidence based on the original text indicate Canary Islands are the location for Atlantis. There's evidence that they may have been very much larger in the past. Also, before the end of the last ice age, the sea levels would have been much lower. Even so, where's the conclusive evidence? Well, it may be on the bottom of the sea between and to the south of the islands. That may be all that remain of the northern mountains described by Plato. One theory regarding Atlantis that has been put forward is that as recently as 10,000 years ago, some together by an unstable over the 60,000 years of the previous ice age. Also, the geological record clearly shows that from time to time, large parts of these islands have the sea levels rose, the underlying rock of the rim plateau is saturated with water and increasingly unstable. Finally, when a severe earthquake occurred, this landmass literally vibrated itself into a fluid state and sank away to be dispersed in the ocean currents. Why does this theory about Atlantis have some credence? The answer lies in Plato's description of what remained after the collapse of Atlantis. He refers to a flood that blocked lips. One slope anomaly, the S1 175 MA anomaly, has also been between the easternmost islands and the area. Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that again we find a consistency between the water.
I'm proud of you, but at the same time, I'm kind of
and so the concept of a single linked island is seem to agree on many geological aspects of these. Gulf Stream in this area, underwater work is difficult and dangerous. But as of now, carefully by an ancient civilization that's faded into obscurity.
You just want to get to look. You're tired. Get some food. Looks like everybody's about ready.
North Sea have discovered the remains of a drowned ancient city which once spanned from the UK all the way to Denmark. An ancient city so massive, its suspected population has been estimated well into the tens of thousands.
No.
Archaeologists and geophysicists have now succinctly mapped the area,
You can go around.
which has revealed just
Go
how
on.
vast and expansive
Go
this
around.
land once was. Many specialists are now claiming this was the real heartland of Europe. This enormous civilization is now believed to have dated back some 8,000 years ago. and that the landmass was submerged over a period of several thousand years, a submersion which began some 20,000. Dr. Richard Bates at the Department of St.
It's okay, she can be out.
who organized the Drowned Landscapes exhibit, covering the finds within the UK, says the data reveals the human story behind Doggerland, a now submerged city
Go around,
in the North Sea
Aria.
that was once larger than many modern European countries. Could these discoveries reveal the real lost city of Atlantis? Several hypotheses have placed the sunken island of Atlantis within modern northern Europe. Most noted among such researchers is Olaus Rudbeck, who suspected that Doggerland, an island, would have been flogged tsunami following the Storegga slide in 6100 BC, is the real location of Atlantis, a proposition he put forward all the way back in the 16th century. Some have proposed the Celtic Shelf as a possible location, and that there are certainly links to Ireland. Many claim such claims, many of these areas being too small to have housed such an enormous city. Doggerland, however, fits the bill. Not only could it turn out to be the largest ancient civilization found on Earth, but it also rests in a fixable location based on historical research for the city of Atlantis.
How do I
It was submerged
access
at one point in
the
history,
hard mode?
and it's
in
revealing
Aquarium?
astonishing ruins of a once great and civilization to
Hard
give
mode
the
in
UK
Aquarium.
coastline of today. We have speculated for years on the lost land's existence from bones dredged by fishermen all over the world, but it's only since working with oil companies in the last year able to read this lost land look like. When the data was being processed, I thought it unlikely to give us any useful information. However, as more areas were covered, it revealed a vast and complex landscape. Could it be that Atlantis is beneath the North Sea?
How do I get to the hard mode of the channel?
Tells about a circular island with concentric structures. Santorini had an impressive concentric geographic setting and had it also before the Minoan eruption. Gallanopoulos and Bacon in 1960 argued that the date for the destruction of Atlantis Plato gives as 9,000 years before his time should read as 900, and that there was an erroneous translation from Solon from the old Egyptian number system. Plato lived circa 3, and Solon's journey to Egypt had taken place about 300 years earlier. Adding the figure should have taken place around 1500 BC, in good agreement to the adding the figure should have taken place around 1500 BC, in good agreement to the recent dating of the Minoan eruption, 1640 BC. The exciting archaeological findings clearly demonstrate that before the Minoan eruption, there was a developed, rich, and marine community whose flourishing economy was provided by intensive trade, shipping, and probably buying. We do not know what happened to these people. It's difficult to imagine that the eruption, which was much bigger than the 79 AD Vesuvius eruption, was completely forgotten in history, but strangely, no ambiguous sources seem to refer directly to the event. On the other hand, there are several ancient myths and hints that could allude to it, including the plagues reported in the Bible. But the most evident one, the one that fits best to the event, is Plato's Atlantis legend. Probably there were no close eyewitnesses of the eruption that could survive and give a direct report. What the ancient people experienced must have been terrifying. It's a matter of speculation how long it took until the first curious arrived again by ship and visited Thera. Considering the possible destructive effects of the eruption and the fact that the sea due to rafting pumice must have been unnavigable for months, at least some time could have passed before a human being first saw the changed island. Thera itself would have presented to these people a picture of complete destruction and profound change, and there would have been visible no trace at all of what existed before, everything being covered with white and unstable masses of ash, landslides, and other forms of erosion. Furthermore, the shape of the island was largely changed. Some steep slopes have been smoothed and new coastal plains created by the ash flows. The isolated rock of Monolithos, previously a small island, had been integrated. Most strikingly of all, the former ring-shaped island had subsided and disappeared during caldera collapse. Some details of Plato's story are clearly describing volcanic phenomena, such as the colors Plato describes as being typical of the rocks of Atlantis: black, lava; white, pumice and ash; and red, lava. These are the colors of Santorini. What did Atlantis look like? It was a round island continent. Where is Atlantis? The island continent was located at such a latitude on the planet to allow it to have a mild Mediterranean climate for most of the year, and it produced bountiful harvests of fruits and vegetables. If the polar axis were in a different place, depending upon where Antarctica would be located, it could undoubtedly have had periods of excellent climate. To reach Atlantis from Egypt, one had to sail out the Pillars of Hercules, that is, the Straits of Gibraltar. To reach Antarctica from Egypt, in days where there was no Suez Canal, one would have had to sail out the Straits of Gibraltar and head southwards across the modern Middle and South Atlantic Oceans, if one's passage was not obstructed by polar ice. Thus, these crucial descriptive points that Plato made about Atlantis can lead us to the assumption was the legendary paradise of Atlantis. The theory of polar axial displacement is complex, but there's evidence of an ice age in South Africa and Hawaii. Traditional science assumes that the current north and south polar ice zones expanded towards the equator, and traditionalists would conclude that the ice age in South Africa was the result of south polar expansion, and that of Hawaii of north polar expansion. There are all sorts of internal contradictions amongst the various establishment theories of so-called ice ages. These currently ice-free areas like South Africa, where there is evidence of an ice age, were merely under a different polar ice cap at a different epoch of a geological time. Assume that the North Pole was once located near Johannesburg, South Africa, that the South Pole was located and would completely reverse the north-south and east-west directions with respect to Egypt and the Great Pyramid. The Pillars of Hercules, or Straits of Gibraltar, are all east, not west of Egypt and Greece. And more importantly, the South Africa polar zone would not have obstructed maritime travel between the Mediterranean and the then unfrozen Atlantis, which would have been in the northern hemisphere at about the same latitudes as modern Australia is located, although twice as large as Australia. A pole shift occurred. The North Pole shifted from South Africa out of the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, stretching from West Africa to northeast Brazil, both regions of which contain evidence of an ice. Because of the polar axis, there was now North Polar ice spanning the Middle Atlantic Ocean, blocking all maritime traffic between the Mediterranean and Antarctica/Atlantis via the Polar. Atlantis distance beneath contact between Egypt and Atlantis were severed permanently. With distinct underwater lore and legends, Atlantis is an obvious subject of interest. However, the lost island of Hy Brasil, with or without a hyphen, is just as intriguing and has more first-person accounts. The name of the mysterious island may come from the Middle Ages term Brazil, which seems to indicate a source of rare red dye. The dye may have acquired its name from the legendary island or vice versa. Also called the Fortunate Island, may originate with the old Breas, meaning noble or fortunate. In folklore, this island country takes its name from Breasal, the High King of the world in Celtic history. He may or may not be related to Breasal Etra Lam, Mac at Chalk Beth Lane from the stories of Luke at Tar. It is not Saint Breasal, although pre-Christian folklore may be the foundation for that saint's legend. The mysterious island was known on maps as early as 1325, when Genoese cartographer and also known as Angelina Dulcillan west of Ireland. On successive sailing charts, it appears southwest of Galway Bay. On some 15th century maps, there's Sola de Brazil, or Insula. Its location could not be verified. Regardless of the name or location, the island's history is consistent. It's the home of a wealthy and highly advanced civilization. Those who visited the island returned with tales of gold-roofed towers and domes, healthy cattle, and opulent citizens. The Irish legend of the disappearing island is, for example, it's shrouded in fog or perhaps beneath the ocean, and the island appears only briefly, once every 7 years. Many people have visited the island for centuries. Both St. Berend and St. Brendan found the island on their respective voyages and returned home with local descriptions of Hy Brasil, which they dubbed the Promised Land. One of the most famous visits to Hy Brasil was in 1674 by Captain John Nisbet of Killybegs Company of Donegal, Ireland. He and his crew were in familiar waters west of Ireland when a fog came up. As the fog lifted, the ship was dangerously close to rocks. While getting their bearings, the ship anchored in 3 fathoms of water, and 4 crew members rowed ashore to visit Brazil Island. Captain Nisbet and his crew spent the day on the island and returned with silver and gold given to them by an old man who lived there. Supposedly, the captain told of large black rabbits and a magician who lived in a castle by himself on the island. However, it appears the story was the fiction of an Irish author, Richard Head. For the crew to Ireland, a second ship set out under the command of Alexander. They too found the hospitable Irish island and returned to confirm the tales of Captain Nisbet and crew. The last documented sighting of Hy Brasil was in 1872, when author T.J. Westrup and several companions saw the island appear and then vanish. This was Mr. Westrup's Irish island, but on this voyage, he brought his mother and some friends to verify its existence. Researchers and archaeologists have searched in the most likely locations west of Ireland, and there is evidence that islands existed there. Shallow water shells have been found at Porcupine Bay, somewhat of the most likely location of the Irish island. Even similar shells were discovered at Rockall. Other islands, Cornwall, England, the Isles of Scilly, there's evidence that the islets were once one much larger mass, and that rising tides that occurred around 400 to 500 AD inundated the land to form smaller islands. There may also be other geological forces at work that stem from the last ice age. Those forces involve the Earth's rising mantle around Scotland. The whole of southern England has been steadily sinking in post-glacial rebound in Scotland. This has caused the Rheas, drowned river valleys, on the southern Cornish coast. For example, River Fal in the Tummer estuary. Dudley Dorothy, excavations of Nornur in the islands of Scilly, 1962 to 1966. The Archaeological Journal, 1967. So there is evidence of geological landmass changes in that part of the Atlantic Ocean. Those Brazil Islands disappearance. The most distinctive geographical feature of High Brazil is that it appears on maps as a perfect circle, with a semicircle channel through the center. The circular perimeter of the island was confirmed by both Saints Berind and Brendan, who set course to determine where the island ended, but never found it. Most likely, although the legendary Irish island does not have the fame of Atlantis, besides role-playing games, it is a story worth exploring. There have been many locations proposed for the location of Atlantis, some legitimate scholarly or archaeological works. Others have been made by psychics. As of yet, no one has been able to prove which of these places, if any, are the real Atlantis.
Wow, that's a lot of nobodies. Newsflash, not all refugees are welcome here.
This is just another moment in this presidency where I thank God he's the president of the United States and Hillary Clinton is not.
Almost 8,000 black people are murdered every year in this country. And it's not by cops, it's by other black people.
Great strengths of Egypt,
You gonna run for me?
keeper of the ancient mysteries, guardian of the
Good.
ancient secrets. The Sphinx is considered to be the greatest statue on Earth.
You gonna run? You gonna
I'm
run
Charles.
from Daddy?
Every 100 years or so, an idea
Run
comes
from
along
Daddy.
and shake the world.
You were,
An
weren't
idea
you?
is so revolutionary that the first
You're
known
in there
believed
now.
it could be true. When Galileo showed evidence that the Earth moved around the sun, the authorities arrested him. Many people refused to believe that the Wright brothers could fly, even after they'd been doing it for 2 years. But apparently, if the evidence is convincing, a theory can be accepted as concrete.
The idea of a lost All the great left us intriguing clues, enigmas, and mysteries. When it comes to the Sumerians, they did leave us monuments, ostentatious clay brick ziggurats that are disappearing into the sands of time. Yet it's the Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian artifacts which remain that give us the most insights into the witness of what was happening back then. Clay tablets, obelisks, crystal carving, inscriptions, trade, culture, and contact with the gods are all exposed in the amazing artifacts that follow. Pythagorean mathematical tablet. Tablet Plimpton 322 is one of the best known mathematical cuneiform texts. This text inspired a lot of publications, especially by mathematicians and computer scientists who were fascinated by the idea that a general method for generating Pythagorean triples was invented more than 1,000 years before Pythagoras. The text became a kind of archetype of cuneiform mathematics, even though this document is completely atypical. The interpretation of Plimpton's and remains quite controversial. Were the 15 preserved triples generated by a systemic algorithm, or were they obtained by chance? What did the lost columns contain? Was the table intended to continue the reverse? And if that's the case, what was the content of this possible extended table? In the bibliography below, which is a small part of the tablet, opposite answers to these questions can be. Libation base of the god Ningizida. Neo-Sumerian era around 2120 BC. The inscription reads, "To the god Ningizida, his god Judea, Ensi, governor of Lagash, for the prolongation of his life and dedicated this." Please note Caduceus, guardian of the high, and thought to be the of Thoth and Hermes. Hermes Trismegistus, a Mesoamerican god, Quetzalcoatl. Ningizida is credited with providing Gudea, one of Sumer's most enlightened and well-known rulers, 22nd century BCE, a set of divine instructions, a holy stylus in which the direction and orientation of a great temple could be established. The temple was a ziggurat, a 7-stage pyramid, and Ningizida, Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, etc., instructed him in how to build a firm foundation capable of supporting the structure. The original cornerstone. The caduceus of the original symbol for whom he used stone. It's one of the most ancient symbols of alchemy. It signified the enlightened philosopher priest king, the archetype of the Egyptian pharaoh, and all the kings and chiefs from all over the world that followed. The serpents represent the balance and duality of moon and sun, of female and male, of the two hemispheres of the mind, of body.
No.
Layered cylinder necklace. Lady Layard's necklace. The gold settings are decorated with chevron borders, which imitates late Assyrian cylinder seals, and included Assyrian lion's heads and pinecone motifs. Sir Austin Henry Layard married in March 1869 at the age of 52. His 25-year-old bride was Enid Guest, daughter of Lady Charlotte Schreiber, made up into a necklace and 2 earrings in these Victorian gold settings. It shows Enid wearing the jewelry, and she wrote in her diary that when they dined with Queen Victoria in 1873, it was much admired. Some of the most enigmatic seals ever discovered, some depicting Apkalus in fish costumes, are encased in this necklace, not to mention the difficult to carve chalcedony.
It's all about women are always heroes and men are always evil. We hear about manspreading. Well, men they open their legs too wide on the train. Every time I'm on the train, the woman next to me has her purses, plural, on the seat next to her because they spend 3 months' salary on their fucking handbags. They don't want to put it down on the dirty New York City ground.
Apkallu sages. During the Neo-Assyrian period, 912 BCE, Apkallus were supernatural creatures, or demigods, richly depicted in palace reliefs. Apkallu, sage, or genie are interchangeable terms used by Assyrian to describe human-headed, male or female, or eagle-headed and winged, with 1 or 2 pairs of wings, figures. Sometimes they wore a fish skin cloak. The figures are protective spirits, just like angels, who protect the planets and contents against evil spirits. The majority were placed flanking corners. This is where the evil spirits were thought to reside. The Apkallu are 7 demigods who are said to have been created by the god Enki to establish culture and give civilization to mankind. They served as priests of Enki and advisors to the earliest kings of Sumer before the flood. Fish-like men who emerged from the sweet water Abzu. They're commonly represented as having the lower torso of a fish or dressed as a fish. According to the myth, human beings were initially unaware of the benefit of cultures and civilization. The god Enki sent from Delmoon amphibious half-fish, half who emerged from the oceans to live with the early human beings and teach them the me, moral code, the crafts, and other aspects of civilization, law, temple, and city building. The Apkallu remained with human beings after teaching them the ways of civilization and served as advisors to kings. The Apkallu are referred to in several Sumerian myths in cuneiform literature. They're first referred to in the Era epic by the character of Marduk, who asks, "Where are the 7 sages of the Apsu, the pure Paradu fish, who, just as their lord Ea, Enki, have been endowed with sublime to the city of Eridu?" However, the names and order of appearance of these 7 sages are varied and very incantation series Bit Viserys' third tablet. Faithful priest of Bel Marduk. Berosus describes the appearance from the Persian Gulf of the first of these sages, Oannes, and describes them as a monster with two heads, the body of a fish and human feet. He then relates that more of these monsters follow. These seven sages are also in an exorcism text where they're described as bearing the likeness of carps. Hammurabi Law Code. The text of the laws is set within a larger prologue and epilogue, which are written in the hymnic epic dialect and which reveal key aspects of kingship, particularly the king's commitment to justice. The top portion of the stela depicts King Hammurabi receiving the laws from Shamash, the god of justice, along with a ring and a rod, two symbols of law and justice. In the prologue, we find Hammurabi is given these law codes from the Anunnaki. When Anu the Sublime, king of the Anunnaki, and Bel, the lord of heaven and earth, who decreed the fate of the land, assigned to Marduk, the overruling son of Ea, god of righteousness, dominion over earthly man, and made him great among the Agigi, they called Babylon by his illustrious name, made it great on earth, and founded an everlasting kingdom in it, whose foundations are laid so solidly as those of heaven and earth. Then Anu and Bel called by name me, Hammurabi, the exalted prince who feared God, to bring about the rule of the land, to destroy the wicked and the evildoers, so that the strong should not harm the weak, so that I should rule over the black-headed people like Shamash, and enlighten the land to further the well-being of mankind. The stela of Hammurabi, now housed in the Louvre Museum in Susa, carried off after this in 1155. It was composed much earlier during the reign of King Hammurabi, 1792 to 1750 BC. The basalt stela records 282 legal provisions that dealt with a range of cases, including those that involve economic transactions, loans, robbery and theft, negligence, marriage, and inheritance, among others. Most of the law provisions are expressed using the casuistic formula, where the protasis presents the circumstances of a legal case and the apodosis presents the appropriate legal response to the case. Behistun inscription, the Rosetta of Persia. The inscription is to cuneiform what the Rosetta Stone.
I'm a working mom of 2 teenagers. I'm a small business owner who has created jobs for other women, who supported many women in their pursuits over the years. Nobody tells me what to do or how to think, how to live my life, or who to vote for, ever. I hold no allegiance to any other woman just because she's a woman. That's tribal and sheepish and stupid.
Is to Egyptian hieroglyphs. The document, the cuneiform, to 260 in Elamite cuneiform, and 112 in Akkadian cuneiform. Copies of the text have been found elsewhere, notably in Babylon and Elephantine, Egypt. Kilometers east of the city Kermen Shah, above an important trade route ultimately connecting Babylonia to India, the royal road of Achaemenid. The inscriptions gave an account of King Darius's accession to the throne of the Persian Empire. According to the narrative, after Cambyses, son of Cyrus, ruling from Egypt, killed Persia and claimed to be Smerdis.
No,
Cambyses
Arya, go around.
Taking the throne, deposed
Arya, go around.
with the help
Arya,
of the
no.
Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda. The inscription also describes a series of rebellions that were quelled and describes the extinction empire. The relief depicts King Darius standing with two supported behind him, facing
Fucking an asshole sometimes. You know that?
a tent lying
really
under
are.
Darius's feet.
Hold on.
A winged
You can go in
disc
there. I know you
representing
go in there.
Ahura hovers overhead. The
Oh.
Behistun inscription
Before
is
you go,
considered
come here.
important in the decipherment of cuneiform in the 19th century, in large part by Rawlinson, though Cathcart has shown that other inscriptions, primarily studied by Edward Hincks, were just as pivotal in the decipherment process. The place name Behistun literally means place of God, and Ahura Mazda, the guy in the flying chariot, is at the center of it all. The Cyrus Cylinder, first charter of human rights. The royal inscription of Persian King Cyrus the Great commemorates his conquest of Babylon, portraying it as a peaceful event guided by Marduk himself. Cyrus was chosen by the Babylonian god to deliver the land from Neo-Babylonian king Nabonidus, portrayed as a failed, oppressive, impious tyrant. The inscription incorporates elements of the classic Mesopotamian royal inscription genre, but rejects boasts of violence, instead highlighting Cyrus's merciful and pious treatment of Babylon, restoring cult centers, returning displaced Mesopotamians to their homes, instituting correction. Although the document has been used as evidence of the Persian policy towards conquered peoples, it must be remembered that it's a work of royal propaganda, and its claims should be taken with a heavy grain of salt. While the text is often admired by modern readers for its kindly outlook, it should be noted that the themes of mercy and piety have been an element of Neo-Babylonian and Neo-Assyrian royal inscriptions before Cyrus, as had the motif of a god choosing his conqueror. German experts are now clamoring to dismantle the cylinder's claim to fame. Among them is ancient history professor Joseph Weissenhofer, who derided it yesterday as a propaganda inscription. It has become a very celebrated document, he said, but Cyrus himself ordered it done, trying to make himself appear righteous. The real king was not more or less brutal than other ancient kings of the Near East, like Xerxes, but he was. In the UK, author and historian Tom Holland, who wrote about the rise of Cyrus in his book Persian Fire, joined the convention as a model of text enshrining human right. It's nonsense. Absolutely nonsense, he said. The ancient Persians were not some early social democrats. He added that conquering a huge empire in the ancient world did not come without a list of atrocities, and he staged several salutatory atrocities when he invaded.
Damn it, Aria.
The Manish Tushu obelisk is an inscribed, four-sided obelisk made of black diorite. It was found during Jacques de Morgan's excavations at Susa, where it had been brought by the Elamite ruler Shutruk Nahunte, together with many other iconic Mesopotamian objects. Its inscription deals with the acquisition of 8 plots of lands by Manish Tushu III, or after Manish Tushu was the 3rd king of the Akkadian Empire. He was the son of Sargon of Akkad and Queen Tashliltum, brother of Enhedu Anna, Ramush, and Shul Enlil, and the father of Naram Sin. He became king in circa 2270 BC after the death of his brother Ramush. Manish Tushu, freed of the rebellions of his brother's reign, led campaigns to distant lands. According to Egyptians, he led a fleet down the Persian Gulf where 30 aligned to fight him. Manish Tushu was victorious and consequently looted their cities and silver mines, along with other expeditions to kingdoms. He also sailed a fleet down the Tigris River that eventually traded with 37 other nations, conquered the city of Shiraz, and rebuilt the destroyed temple of Inanna in Nineveh in circa 20. In circa 2255 BC, he died, assassinated by members of his own court, and was succeeded by his son, Naram Sin. A pyramidal stele erected by Manish Tushu, bearing a long cuneiform inscription in Akkadian, is featured in the Louvre. This large, well-preserved tablet presents an account of Sargon II's 8th campaign against Urartu in the form of a shore. The letter offers a long, detailed, and dramatic account of a Neo-Assyrian campaign, describing the hazards and hardships of his army's march, its success in battle, and its take. Perhaps because a god could be expected to be especially interested in such detail, the destruction of the Urartian cult center, Musasir, is given prominence. Despite the similarity to Neo-Assyrian royal annals, the text operates within the frame of a letter and all that entails. It even opens with the ordinary greetings and exhortations, wishing that all will go well with the god. The text demonstrates one of the underlying assumptions of Neo-Assyrian expansionism, that it was for the pleasure and the benefit of the Assyrian gods, watched over by them and reported on to them. The letter was addressed not only to the god, but also to the people of Assur and the city itself. It is usually presumed after an influence c. 143 that the letter was read aloud as an element in a public victory ceremony, although there is no external evidence of such a practice. Although fragments of letters to gods by Asar Eva Miller, University of Oxford. The Middle Assyrian laws are found on a group of 10 that are labeled MALA2O. The object under discussion ALA, the best preserved tablet, which has a late fragmentary duplicate. The importance of this tablet is less its state of preservation but the fact that it deals predominantly concerning women, considering many aspects of violation. Assyrian law was very similar to, although the penalties for offenses were generally the first to come to light, dated to the reign of Tiglath-Pileser II, 1904 to 1913. 3 Assyrian law collections have been found to date. Punishments such as the cropping of ears and noses was common, as it was in the Code of Hammurabi, which was composed several centuries earlier. Murder was punished by the family death penalty for the murderer. The cylinders of Gudea, first mention of the Anunnaki. A pair of almost complete large clay cylinders and 10 unplaced fragments containing a hymn to the temple of Ningirsu. Cylinder A describes the dream omens received by the ruler Gudea and his guest for interpretation. The dreams are revealed as divine construction of a new temple to Ningirsu in Girsu. The remainder of Cylinder A details the construction of the temple. Cylinder A opens on a day in the distant past when destinies were determined with Enlil, the highest god in the Sumerian pantheon. In session with the divine council and looking with admiration at his son Ningirsu, another name for Ninurta, and his city Lagash. City B describes the consecration of the temple and the investment of different deities into it. The cylinder begins with a narrative hymn, starting with a prayer to the Anunnaki. Gudea then announces the house ready for the accommodation of the white vow. Food and drink are prepared, incense is lit, is organized to welcome the gods into their home. The city is then judged again, and a number of deities are appointed by Enki to fill various positions within the structure. A 7-day celebration is given by Gudea for Ningirsu with a banquet dedicated to Anu, Enlil, and Ninmah, Ninhursag, the major gods of Sumer, who are all in attendance. Obelisk of Shalmaneser III, ruled 858 to 824 BCE, represents a perfect blending of word and visual in a demonstration of Assyrian power and superiority. Approximately 6.5 feet tall and carved out of black limestone, depictions of foreign emissaries delivering tribute are spread over 5 registers, each stretching across its 4 sides. Captions to the images boast of the tribute and its origin, while a cuneiform inscription at the top and bottom of the obelisk recounts the military campaigns of Shalmaneser up to its 31st year. The obelisk dates to BCE, towards the very end of his reign and when he was embroiled in a civil war. Animals who are brought as tribute include camels, an elephant, a rhinoceros, carved quite clearly by an individual who had never seen one, and apes, depicted as stooped humans with dog-like faces. The obelisk glorifies not only King Shalmaneser III, but also his military commander, Dayan Assur, who may have had a hand in its creation. The obelisk is also notable for its mention of King Jehu of Israel, Jehu son of Omri, Iya Uchu Amar Hu'um Ri'i. The first visual image of an Israelite in history depicts him, whether Jehu himself or emissary is unclear, on his hands and knees and offering tribute to Shalmaneser III. Eva Miller, University of Oxford. Statue of Edrimi, Akkadian script in Turkey. The statue of Alalat King Edrimi is one of the outstanding pieces of the second half of the second millennium in Syria. The inscription written all over the statue, even on the beard, is one of only a few specimens of autobiographical texts from Mesopotamia. Alalat, modern Tel Echana, belonged then to the territory of Aleppo and therefore to the powerful kingdom of Mitanni. The text tells Edrimi's story to Amar and then moving on to live amongst Canaanite tribes. And marched back to Alalat. Paratarna, the king of Mitanni, recognized his power over the throne of Alalat. The inscription on the inscription tells how, following a dispute, Edrimi and his family were forced to flee Yamhad, Aleppo, to his mother's family at Amar, now Mesquite, on the river Euphrates. Determined to restore the dynasty's fortunes, Edrimi left Amar and traveled to Canaan, where he made a treaty with the king Uman Manda, rallied troops, and mounted a seaborne expedition to recover his lost territory from the Hittites. He eventually became a vassal of King Baratarna, who installed him as king in Alalat, which he ruled for 30 years. The inscription ends with curses on anyone who desecrates or destroys the statue. The banquet stele of Assur-Nasir-Pal II. The banquet stele of Assur-Nasir-Pal II records the 9th century Neo-Assyrian king's renovation to Kalmu, modern-day Nimrud, which he made his capital. It boasts of the lavish palace and gardens he built, the restoration of temples, and the resettlement and rejuvenation of surrounding towns. The derives from its most unique claim that in 879 BC, Assur-Nasir-Pal II celebrated his new capital with a lavish feast, at which he served 69,574 people, male and female, local and foreign envoy, with an obscene amount of meat, poultry, vegetables, and alcohol. Impossibly high, and was likely a typically bombastic royal exaggeration. All the same, this is good evidence that luxurious mass public feasting was one possible feature of royal events. Eva Miller, University of Oxford. In 879 BC, King Assur-Nasir-Pal II celebrated the completion of his new palace, now known as the Northwest Palace, by hosting a party that lasted for 10 days. 69,574 guests were invited, men and women from across the Assyrian realm, including 16,000 citizens of Kalu and 5,000 visiting dignitaries. Assur and all the other gods, they feasted on thousands of sheep, oxen, and deer, tens of thousands of birds and fish, eggs, hundreds of containers of grains, vegetables, bread, cheese, nuts, and fruit, garnished with hundreds of jars of honey and spices. To wash it down, the guests were given 10,000 jugs of beer and 10,000 skins of wine. They were bathed, anointed with oil, and sent home in peace and joy. Assur-Nasir-Pal commemorated this feast in an inscribed stela, the so-called banquet stela, set up near the throne room of his new palace. Khan, who came into power in 23, was the first Mesopotamian ruler to unite Sumer and other Mesopotamian territories under one regime and proclaim his own right. Along with this political shift came a shift in artistic representation. Earlier works often focused on depictions of divine beings. In the Akkadian period, the rise of human sovereigns led to the creation of glorified earthly rulers. This bronze portrait head, believed to represent Sargon, is one of the first of these royal likenesses. Through its precise, detailed craftsmanship and realistic features not seen in earlier works, the head simultaneously conveys a sense of its subject's grandeur and humanity. In the ancient Near East, the concept of representation involved a complex relationship between the immediate represented symbol standing for that person. Rather, it embodied some of the real presence of the individual and could therefore act as a substitute for him or her. By inscribing the individual, furthermore, that presence could be enhanced. Following the head of Sargon, originally a full-bodied sculpture, would have been not just a statement of the king's power, but also a perpetual embodiment of it. Likewise, to damage the sculpture would have been to harm the king himself. The head of Sargon plainly has been mutilated. In addition to the severing of the head from its lost body, the image bears various marks of violence. The left eye socket is broken. Although it's been suggested that the eye socket was damaged by someone attempting to precious material, there's no evidence that the hole ever contained anything at all. And in any case, the other explanation. The desecration of the royal portrait was almost certainly intentional and most likely an act of political iconoclasm, possibly carried out at the time of Nineveh's fall to the Medes and Babylonians in the early 7th century BCE. The selective disfiguration of the head suggests that the goal was not to wipe away all presence of the royal figure, but rather to leave it in a state of defeat and humiliation. Number 20, the Warka Dictionary. An ancient dictionary from Warka, Uruk, thought currently located at the Louvre in France. It is the modern Tal al-Warka, Uruk, dating from the 5th millennium BCE, was the largest city in Mesopotamia and an important religious center. The sanctuaries of the goddess Inanna, who corresponds to the Babylonian Ishtar, also called Nana or Iana, and Anu, the sky god, date from the early 4th millennium BC. The Temple of Anu, known as the White Temple, stood on a terrace and seems to have been a primitive form of ziggurat. Uruk was the home of Gilgamesh and is mentioned in the Bible, Genesis 10:10. There have been excavations at this site since 1912. The world's oldest dictionary is one of the most surprising objects to come out of this ancient site. It's one of the oldest deciphered writings of significant length in the world.
When you're launching a new product, you need customers to love it. SurveyMonkey Audience helps you get market feedback quickly, so your product is a hit. Just choose your audience, send out your survey, and watch the results instantly roll in. SurveyMonkey Audience. Test your product, launch with
contains many mysteries that make many scratch their heads in wonderment as to how it was done in a more primitive era. Ancient technological wonders can't be duplicated even today, and others that are way ahead of their time. Is there some form of advanced ancient technology waiting to be rediscovered? Another perplexing site is what we call the Serapeum at Saqqara, granite boxes academics believe were created during dynastic times. However, Serapeum are examples of what engineers such as Chris Dunn had major problems with regards the conventional Egyptologist explanations. According to the last century BC, Set ordered that a tunnel be excavated through the solid limestone bedrock, with side chambers designed to contain large granite weighing at least 70 tons each to hold the mummified remains of prize Apis bulls. Manufacturer Chris Dunn is a man who knows what precision surfaces look like, and he's been involved in making complex metal parts for the aviation industry for decades. He studied the boxes at the Serapeum many times and has been able to measure the flatness of their granite and limestone surfaces using precise gauges. Their characteristics show that their creators used the same tools and were blessed with the same skill and knowledge as those who created Khafre's pyramid. Moreover, the boxes in both locations are evidence of a much higher purpose than mere burial sarcophagi. They're finished to a high accuracy. Their corners are remarkably square, and their inside corners work down to a dimension that is sharper than what one would expect to find in an artifact from prehistory. All these features are extremely accomplished, and none of them are a mere burial box. The manufacturers of these boxes in the Serapeum not only created inside surfaces that were flat when measured vertically and horizontally, they also made sure that the surfaces they were creating were square and parallel to each other, with one surface sides that are 5 feet and 10 feet apart from each other. But without such parallelism and squareness on the top surface, the squareness noted on both sides would not exist. Argue that modern man cannot impose a modern perspective on artifacts that are thousands of years old. An appreciation of the level of precision artifacts is lacking in archaeological literature and is only revealed by an undertakes to produce this kind of work. The accomplishment in prehistory deserves more recognition. Nobody does this kind of work unless there's a very high purpose for the artifact. Even the concept of this kind cannot occur to an artisan unless there's no other means of accomplishing what they intended to do. The only other reason that such precision would be created in an object would be that the tools that are used to create it are so precise that they're incapable of producing anything less than precision. In Ellora, Maharashtra, the rock-cut temples that form the Ellora caves. Why is it thought to have been built using alien technology? The answer is simple. Historians find it impossible to believe that such an architectural marvel was created entirely by ancient human beings. The Kailasa Temple is the only temple in the world to have been completely carved out from a hill. It's for this reason that it's called a single stone megalith. Dedicated to the Hindu god Shiva, the entire temple, archaeologists believe, was built using a technique that's not been seen anywhere else in the world. The technique used demanded massive quantities of rock be carved out to create the structure. About 44,000 tons of rock was carved out to create this temple. This would easily take centuries of labor. However, the entire temple is said to have been built in years. That too using simple tools such as chisels and hammers. The feat was achieved with a civilization which, a unique aspect of the temple is its advanced design. Systems like rainwater harvesting were thought of and built into the design of the temple, something that, centuries later, we still have a problem implementing well. The temple also has an impeccable drainage system. Apart from this, there are bridges that connect different areas, peepholes to see people coming up, and giant balconies built into the structure. This means that everything to the tiniest.
The nation's top critics are raving about Leave No Trace. It's a deeply affecting story. Mackenzie gives a powerful.
Detail had to be planned as it had to be carved out from the rock. Although widely believed to be built during the reign of Rashtrakuta King Krishna I during the 8th century, there's almost no recorded information about either its construction or its architects. Using some form of advanced technology, also perfectly aligned with the 4 directions. Image of the temple shows us that the structure is a rectangle whose entrance is perfectly aligned with the wall. It's one of the only rock caves that can be seen from the air. The roof of the temple has a huge circular design with 4 lions that look like an X from the sky. There are theories which claim that this circle was built to signal extraterrestrial life. If all this is true, and our ancestors did communicate with aliens, then there's always hope that sometime in the future we'll get to experience the same. It's truly mind-boggling to imagine what might have come out of that interaction. Are these ancient energy towers located high up in Silustani, Peru? The official version of Silustani is that it's a pre-Incan cemetery, Umayo, near Puno in Peru. The tombs, which are built above ground in tower-like structures called chulpas, are the vestiges of the Kula people, who are Aymara conquered by the Inca Empire in the 15th century. Many of the chulpas at Silistani show pre-Inca characteristics that were later redressed with Inca stone blocks. Similar chulpas are found in South Central Andes, with the above-ground burial style going back at least to the mature Tiwanaku period, circa 500 to 950. The insides hold entire groups of people, most likely extended families of the Aymara elite. Corpses were not intentionally mummified, but in the dry environment created by the closed tomb, they survived for centuries. Most mummy bundles indicate burial in a fetal position. Some of the tombs also have various animal shapes carved into the stone. The only openings to the buildings face east, which is where the sun was reborn by Mother Earth each day. The architecture of the site is often considered more complex than typical Incan architecture. In contrast with the Inca, who used stones in varying shapes, the Kola used even rectangle edges. While chulpas are not unique to Silistani and are found across the Anteplano, this site is considered the best and most preserved example of them. These findings are disputed by researcher Bren Forster, stating clearly this work was beyond the capability of the Bronze Age. So, who made them and when? The towers are constructed with tight-fitting stone, with no mortar or cement, like what we see at Pumapunku and many other sites in South America where advanced technology is evident. After discovering energy lines running through the towers, Forster postulates that these could be high-altitude energy devices, but energy towers remains a mystery for now. This great archaeological complex is in the district of Pisac province of Chalco, 33 kilometers east of the city of Cusco. There's a strange coincidence between the distances that unite Pisac, Cusco, and Picolacta. The distance between Cusco and Pisac is 30 kilometers, and it's the same distance between Pisac and Picolacta, and also 30 kilometers from Cusco to Picolacta. When one joins the three cities along a straight line, one forms This has sparked a great deal of speculation. When one joins the three cities along a straight line, one forms equal. This has sparked a great deal of speculation about why they would do this, and if the Inca were responsible for this incredible architectural genius. The beauty of its walls, which are made of huge blocks of polished stone, with extraordinary symmetry and a unique mastery of stone, leaves the visitor puzzled. In many parts of this complex, there's evidence of advanced ancient technology. The Incas could not have shaped these stones with soft bronze tools. On the shores of the Wilcamayu, the god-sacred river that runs through carved stone streams to curb its fury, one can see the light and shadowy lines of the Pisac terraces, the great city of doves, a city of legend that was built on top of a blue rock, almost in air to see more of the most beautiful Cusco valleys, wrote Peruvian historian Alfonsini Barrionuevo of this ancient Inca city. Pisac is formed by a group of homes, roads, bridges, a cemetery, walls, and great terracing. When Antonio Raimondi, the Italian naturalist,
The new Moto G6 generation was designed for you. creative you.
Who pushed boundaries?
For the smart you, because you know that the best things in life don't always cost more. The new Moto G6.
Naturalist and geographer visited Pisan. He was astonished by the beauty of its walls and wrote the following. What we must admire most in Pisan is the fine carving and the perfect union of the rocks assembled, that one can hardly see very fine, straight, circled, or crooked lines, as to demonstrate the difficulty of the cut and the weediness of the execution. From distance, you can see doors, streets, stairs, towers, quarters, and living quarters. Suspended in the highest peaks and where the imagination of the most daring constructor would barely dare to raise a building. There are no precise facts about the first settlement in this area. The Tiahuanacos, Huaris, and other cultures had a major cultural influence on the southeastern. It's assumed that the entire area, which later was occupied by Pisan, was already settled around the 10th and 11th centuries when the Inca boom began, since it is fertile and productive lands that had to be occupied by one of the groups that originated in the area. Many researchers are starting to consider whether a more advanced ancient civilization was responsible for parts of this incredible complex. As with most ancient sites in Peru, the rough stone and clay mortar Inca construction was built on top of and around and superior megalithic construction made of extremely hard granite and andesite. Who were these megalithic master masons? Ollantaytambo is not only one of the most impressive places in South America, but it's one of the most impressive places in the world. This ancient Inca city is enveloped in experts can't explain. Its megalithic constructions have an inexplicable perfection, in some strange way, molded to perfection and stacked in the walls, without need of any kind of glue, as if they'd taken their shape in a 3D printer. Located 3,000 meters high in the middle of the sacred valley of the Incas, and is one of the most important Inca sites in Peru. For sure, one of the most impressive megalithic sites in South America. Granite blocks of up to 80 tons, perfectly carved, form the walls of their constructions. But many of these stones were extracted directly from the mountainside, on the other side of the valley. Its incredible stone constructions are not the only thing amazing about this place, because if you didn't know, Ollantaytambo is aligned with other important ancient constructions around the world. The pyramids of Giza, Paratoya, and the Easter Islands are just a few of them. The incredible structures of Ollantaytambo suggest to many experts the possibility that the people who built this technology lost at some point in time, perhaps even civilization. Rica, or the Moai statues of the Easter Islands in Chile. One of the great mysteries of Ollantaytambo is why the Temple of the Sun was never completed. The temple of the amazing constructions that you can see at Ollantaytambo. It consists of 6 monoliths of tens of tons, so the builders had no problem with the weight. But then, why did they never get to finish this project? It's not only its alignment with other incredible constructions on Earth that makes this place so out of place, but the incredible precision with which these stones, some of the corners fit so perfectly that they've puzzled archaeologists all over the world. Many scholars agree that a work of such magnitude can only be made with quartz, carbon, hardened or cobalt glass. We do not know these materials because until today, no tools of this type have been found in Ollantaytambo. The complexity of Ollantaytambo coincides with places like Tiahuanaco, Umapunku, or the Great Pyramid of Giza, 2570 BC. But these places are separated not only by thousands of kilometers, but thousands of years in the history of time. The only thing that can be said about Ollantaytambo at this moment is that it's an ancient wonder. It has built as any wonder of the world. Here we have another astonishing archaeological site in the Andes Mountains that questions the conventional history of mankind. Sacsay, the formidable city of Cusco. First and foremost, the enigmatic construction is a masterpiece of engineering. Modern-day experts cannot explain how it was built. Sacsayhuaman is a marvel of mathematics, philosophy, and advanced engineering. Huge stones, most of which weigh as much as 100 tons, have been laid out in a zigzag formation. Like all Inca stonework, there's still debate surrounding how they were constructed. Thanks to a yet unexplained precision in stone cutting, these structures built in such a way that a seat will not fit between two stones. This precision, combined with the rounded corners of the limestone blocks, the variety of their interlocking shapes, and the way the walls lean inward, ubiquitous in Inca architecture, is thought to increase the ruins' incredible durability. Devastating earthquakes in Cusco have left it undamaged. Experts today can't agree exactly how the ancients were able to accomplish this feat of engineering. Some have cited advanced technology. Others think it was done through a vast network of mirrors and lenses to concentrate sunlight. I think anyone can agree on is how impressive it is. The purpose of the megalithic wall of Sacsayhuaman is not the only mystery left to us by the ancient architects. The construction remains to be It's just 50 years ago that the modern science, due to the input of the American researchers, adopted the thesis that all the known masonry techniques of the Inca monuments pertain to Incas. Although earlier, many of the researchers believed that these Cyclopean stone constructions must have been erected by a highly developed ancient culture which existed there long before the accession of Inca. It's also worth noting, having conquered Cusco in 1534, the Spanish conquistadors have enthroned Manco Inca Yupanqui, the son of the last great Inca, Huayna Capac. However, it's already in 1536 that raised a revolt against the Spanish conquistadors. In May of that year, a huge army of Inca, as of the chronicler's data, it counted between 100 and 200,000 people, put Cusco under siege. The Indians took possession of the Sacsayhuaman Hill and from its top began to bombard the city, where the Spaniards have settled with the fire ship. So that to avoid a disastrous defeat, the conquistadors attempted with a counterattack of the hill on the day they succeeded and seized it. The application of the assault ladder from the European castles there was no problem with conquering the 5 to 6 meter walls of Sacsayhuaman. In other words, this soul-stirring action in Sacsayhuaman evidently demonstrates that this grandiose sites on planet Earth that display the incredible stone masonry skills of its mysterious builders. Pumapunku means the door of the Puma.
Give me some time, strangers.
Why on earth would you ever be frightened of me?
Native Aymara language. The precision stone masonry found at Pumapunku is both incredibly mysterious and beautiful. But this ancient archaeological site has features that engineers and architects are replicating today. Pumapunku, just like other incredible ancient archaeological sites, defies ancient mankind's possibilities thousands of years ago. Possible that ancient inhabitants of Peru, Bolivia, and Egypt had advanced technology that allowed them to erect some of the most incredible ancient sites on the planet? Or is it possible that incredible ancient sites like Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, the pyramids of Caucan in Mexico were all built with the use of stone tools and without the wheel? What if ancient mankind used other technologies that are to our society today? It's very interesting to know that the andesite blocks located at Pumapunku range from varied sizes. Some of them have up to 7 meters in height. As for the weight, some of the blocks found at Pumapunku. So you must ask yourself, how is it possible that ancient man was able to cut, quarry, transport, and put these incredible blocks of stone into place thousands of years ago? The precision found at Pumapunku is what baffles most of the visitors. The 90-degree carved blocks of stone are fascinating feats of masonry, smooth surfaces that were impossible to replicate using stone tools and copper. Some of the andesite blocks at Pumapunku even have perforation dots. Some researchers believe these perforation marks are in fact marks left by highly advanced tools that were used for carving and extraction processes. Pumapunku is without a doubt one of the most mysterious places on this planet, and it's located near Tiwanaku, less than a quarter mile northeast of Pumapunku. Scientists believe Tiwanaku was once the center of a civilization with more than 40,000 inhabitants. Tiwanaku is probably the greatest Native American civilization that many people haven't heard of. Pumapunku is simply a place these incredible constructions, manipulate perfection. Your imagination just fires up. There are so many possibilities, and conventional archaeological explanation just don't logic at that point. It's nearly impossible to think that ancient man was able to do all of this at a time when history tells us humans were extremely primitive beings. Ancient mankind must have had some sort of mysterious ancient technology that's been lost, together with the great civilization that built this incredible archaeological site. We believe that Pumapunku is another ancient site displaying evidence of advanced ancient technology.
I see you. I see you.
The
I see you too.
technologies of ancient civilizations
You
continue
made me
to
laugh
enable
so much
scientific
last night.
explanation. Like the pyramids and other megalithic monuments, building Nan Madol required a tremendous effort and expertise so that the substantial number of stones, weighing anywhere from 50 tons, could be moved and raised to where they were needed. To erect walls 10 feet wide and up to 37 feet tall, ancient builders used magic. A powerful magician living in the well-inhabited region on the northwest of the island was solicited with sounds of varying pitch. He made basalt logs fly through the air like birds in their appointed places. The scientific theory about lugging the stones by water on bamboo raft, while making a documentary movie about Nan Madol for the Discovery Channel in 1995, all attempts to transport panels weighing over 1 ton failed. This cornerstone Nandowas is believed to weigh up to 60 tons. The peculiar location of the city raises another question. Why was it raised in the ocean waters? Each structure had to be built on a specially constructed artificial rectangle edged by long basalt boulders and filled with coral granules. 92 such artificial islets cover the area. Why did the early construction a practical idea with the demanding labor of building artificial sea islands when there were so many islands there, when they could have simply cleared the shore of palm trees? Why would someone build a city on coral reefs that rises only 5 feet above water? Nan Madol had no food or water available on the island. One must go inland to gather water and grow. The Sauteleurs, they were the supreme rulers. The people had to bring them what they needed. When the Sauteleurs were overthrown and the period of Nanawarkis began, the Nanawarkis lived at Nan Madol, but they farm and grow their food themselves, causing them to eventually abandon Nan Madol. The materialists contend that the island inhabitants constructed the city using massive manpower, rafts, ropes, and rollers. First attempts to have failed. Nevertheless, like similar theories about the building of the Great Pyramids or Stonehenge, which also cannot be recreated, the theories are still touted as truth because there's no other explanation allowable in the scientist mythology. Physics and engineering don't support the materialists as usual. These still existing structures have been calculated to measure 750,000 metric tons. The total population of 35,000 were used 24/7 assessment. At such a rate, it would have required 3 centuries to complete Nan Madol. So what was the real purpose of Nan Madol? And how did they make this place with primitive tools? These questions have puzzled scientists for centuries. Long predate the construction of the Temple of Jupiter and are likely to be 12,000 or more years old, contemporaneous with the megalithic site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. I suggest we're looking at the handiwork of the survivors of a lost civilization. The Romans built their temple of Jupiter on a pre-existing megalithic foundation, and that they were on megaliths in the ancient quarry as they were covered by sediment in Roman times, as indeed the easily distorted block still was until very recently. The temple is one of the largest stone structures in the world. Some 26 feet above the structure's base are found 3 of the largest stones ever employed by man. Each of these stones measures 10 feet thick, 13 feet high, and is over 60 feet long. £1,000,000. Impressive engineering skills cut, dressed, and moved these immense stone blocks from a quarry 3/4 of a mile away. A walk to this quarry introduces the observer to the monolith, an even larger block of limestone, 13 feet 5 inches, 15 feet 6 inches, and 69 feet 11 inches. The monolith weighs in at over 2 million pounds. In comparison, the largest stones used in the Great Pyramid tip the scales at only 400,000 pounds. Forget the ancient airplanes, the ancient helicopters, the world maps. This alone should set the standard primitive man to advanced man, and then to civilization, scientific dogma on its ear. There's no way that this stone can be explained by the science and history they teach us in school. No technology existing today could move this stone, much less transport it from where it was quarried. The pre-existing stone foundation upon which the Romans built their temple at this site is half-mile long on one side. No one knows who built it. There are no historical records. 60 diary, Scottish traveler David Urquhart wrote that he found the giant stones so enormous the stones are unnecessarily large. Why would anyone cut and move them to build a platform unless they had the technology to do that easily? Don't spend the resources of a kingdom to build a platform. Today's but for the purpose, you'd also need to build a special road with perfectly smooth surface. What if this ancient site was built by an ancient civilization that had in their possession advanced technology? Technology that's now lost. A technology that even possibly helped create many other megalithic sites across the world. From a technological point of view, the Great Pyramid was made using more advanced technology than that of today's engineering machines. For example, a piece of concrete, there are only 2 cranes which can carry the weight of 200 tons in the United States. But a few hundred of 200-ton class stones were used in this lower temple. The chief of the crane that lifted a 200-ton boiler in Long Island, New York, said the following about the block stones of the lower temple. I'm looking at what you're showing me here and looking at the distances involved. I don't know if we'd be able to pick the 200-ton blocks from the positions that I see available to us. In my business, we pick heavy loads, and we look to see how heavy loads were picked up by other people before us, and seeing how they moved these heavy blocks, 200-ton blocks, thousands and thousands of years ago. I have no idea how they did this job. It's a mystery, and it'll probably always be a mystery to me, and maybe to everybody. Seems to be very hard, even with modern science, to lift 200-ton objects. but there is a piece of stone as heavy as 490 tons among the block stones used for the pyramids. The heaviest weight that the crawler transporter that was used to transport the Saturn rocket that a U.S. space base can transport is 500 tons. A technician at Obayashi Corporation, a Japanese general contractor, said the following: "The task of lifting and putting down a huge 490-ton stone is practically impossible, even for a modern giant crane operation specialist." In addition, the stones around the top of the Great Pyramid are the biggest, making it obvious that the Great Pyramid could not have been built with today's technology. This, it must be conceded, is not just the time, but the Rolex, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Rolls-Royce, and IBM of building engineering all rolled into one. There are many scientific investigations of Giza's pyramids. In addition to science, archaeology is always making progress as well. The imaginative theory that tens of thousands of slaves built the pyramids using manpower is becoming unreliable. Recently, many technicians and archaeologists have pointed out the pyramids were an energy-generating system. While Chris Dunn, a former of the space aeronautics industry, investigated the complicated and geometric structure of the inside of the Great Pyramid and was convinced that it was the mechanical device from which the most important inner structural parts for some reason. It was built with an abundance of cut stones, 2.3 million pieces, weighing 5.8 million tons, using higher technology than that now used in the newest high-rise buildings, because constructors wanted a large enough reward, that is, an enormous supply of electrical power. Chris Dunn supposed that the Great Pyramid amplified and changed sound waves, vibration waves, that came from inside the Earth in prehistory than what is currently accepted. Clearly, the techniques used to produce these features has been lost to modern science, yet it's good evidence that an advanced ancient civilization existed worldwide on this planet.
Launch. Just choose your target consumer and ads, better ads, no guesswork.
Hundreds, if not thousands, of priceless historical art sold and passed through numerous hands only to be spirited away across multiple borders to a private market estimated to be worth as much as $6.3 billion a year. This documentary will explain how ownership and the process of identifying and then returning museum stolen artifacts to their country of origin is extremely murky. Rosetta Stone. This find was made by a French soldier in 1799. Pierre Bouchard, who was simply trying to increase the size of a French fort in Rosetta, Egypt, stumbled upon the Rosetta Stone. It was in an old wall that was being demolished for the expansion of the fort. Fortunately, the commanding officer recognized its importance and extracted the piece. With its discovery, Napoleon of France was invading Egypt, so the Rosetta Stone was claimed as. After its discovery, the British defeated the French and claimed all their important cultural artifacts. Since 1802, the stone has been held in the British Museum for years. Many Egyptians feel that the stone belongs to their country and should be held in a museum on Egyptian soil. The Rosetta Stone in 96 BCE for Ptolemy V, the king of Egypt at the time. It's a with an inscription, also known as a stela. It feet by 2.5 feet, and it was originally a part of a bigger slab that was in a temple in Cius, about 35 miles north of Alexandria. The stela represents a decree issued in Egypt that praises Ptolemy V for his achievements and states that a statue will be set up in his honor. The text further decrees that the king's birthday and coronation dated with festivals and sacrifices. The Rosetta Stone was a landmark in understanding Egyptian culture. It was written in two languages, Greek and Egyptian, and 3 scripts, a scriptic alphabet. The Egyptians used one language to communicate, and many elites used hieroglyphics, and the common people of Egypt used Demotic in their form of writing. For years, archaeologists were unable to decode the writing of Egyptian hieroglyphics, but the Rosetta Stone gave them the answers they were looking for. The same passage was inscribed on the stone 3 times in 3 different scripts. This allowed English scientist Thomas Young and French scholar Jean-Francois Champollion to decode the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Thomas Young started the process by decoding a few symbols, but Jean-Francois Champollion is credited with deciphering most of the Egyptian hieroglyphic alphabet, using his knowledge of the ancient Greek language. At last, the culture of the Egyptians could be understood in the inscriptions, but the Egyptians as well. To further understand their past and read the inscriptions of their late kings and queens.
Sì, è interessante.
57 races, an extraordinary record, but still very disappointing.
Very disappointed today with the first lap. Under a very difficult weekend, we just drove for pay the whole weekend. And done a bit better. Unfortunately, we had an issue with the engine. And we were in the points. We should have scored a couple of good points for the team. Unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Sebastian, on your point of view, what happened in the start?
My start was too good, so I got stuck. Obviously, the wait turn 1 is not too long. With the slipstream, and I was stuck.
So I couldn't go right, I couldn't go left, I couldn't go. I tried to get out of it, but I had zero grip, and then unfortunately hit battery. So it's a shame because, yeah, first of all, for him, he had nothing to do with it. I think he did well. He tried to obviously defend his second play, and then got hit. But fortunately, the way we both could continue, for me was the nose, for him was only a puncture. But yeah, I ruined his race, so I apologize already. But
Good fight for you anyway.
it was quite entertaining, but I would have hoped for a boring race out in the front. But maybe next time. Very frustrated. I mean, at the start, I had a good start. You know, I was alongside Roma. I had, one wheel on the edge of the track already. Everything was going to finally turn into me. There was nobody on this side. My car already could have retired from that. And then in turn 3, Pierre ends the job and lost from the braking. So disappointed. It's been so long since I wanted to race here in front of my own crowd. We've been preparing that race very much. And now it's disappointed I am.
What was your vision of everything that happened in the beginning?
Yeah, basically I was at the start quite a lot of cars in turn 1 was quite messy, and I saw Esteban had damage on the front wing, and then I was tried to go on the inside, and I think he didn't really see me. Took the corner as normal, and yeah, didn't have anywhere to go, so I could not really avoid the contact, and so much disappointment now for the comeback of our own race. Especially between two French drivers is boring.
Thank you very much.
Boring.
Thank you very much.
Himself in the right position, and then we went out sixth. Yeah, and then another point which I'm very happy about. On the other hand, I think the potential to be 9 was there today, but I did a small mistake trying to overtake Kevin, or being behind Kevin. I was pushing to try to put a bit more pressure, but I lost the car from the rear in turn 2, went over the yellow curves and lost the position with Nico. It's like this. I mean, as I said, we are coming from a very strong momentum. We didn't do many errors in the last 4 or 5 races, and today I did one. So it happens, and I'll try to learn from it. Screens that there was some overtakes going on. So yeah, it was actually.
It is almost like looking, right behind the wall.
It's an amazing product, in my opinion. It's an amazing product.
It shows you that this is a wire. It shows you that the stud is actually wood or a metal stud. It works. In fact, it works better than what I thought it would. And if a tool makes me money, if it helps me finish one job, then it's worth every dollar.
For renovation and remodeling,
Actually quite 2 parts that were on different strategies with all 3 coming back, so there was quite big difference of speed. But yeah, out of 7 I thought more problem to follow, and actually it was not so bad.
You just won your 23rd Grand Prix in a different country. You have now beaten Michael Schumacher's record. How do you feel?
Listen, you're news to me. Every time I'm told of these records, I'm just blown away by my even more and more. Just obviously a long career and incredible statistics, and just brings me back to watching them as a kid. And I was actually, I don't know if Kimi growing up, and I was always sales with McLaren since I was 13, and I used to play PlayStation F1 on PlayStation all the time, and now it's Kimi, which is kind of crazy. I wasn't Montoya. I was always, yeah, always wanted to race against him. So it's kind of crazy. It's just crazy how life works and how you get the opportunity to work with some of these legends. And I don't know if they realize the respect that the younger generation will have. Maybe do, maybe don't, but.
Fantastic. Thank you, Max. Anything to add on? 5-second penalty for that incident.
Yeah, I think next time you see to change his style, because honestly, that's what they said to me in the beginning of the season. That's what they said to me in the beginning of the season. So I think they should do the same. And then, of course, Seb shouldn't do anything and just drive again and learn from this and go on. That's my advice to everyone in this room.
Yeah, it's been good. Again, a good weekend. The pace has been alright. I don't think this is our best track, but to come home in second, quite close to the roots, because you're controlling the pace, but also from our side, you don't want to overstress things. Yeah, looked alright. And of course, a bit lucky not to get hit in turn one. So we just control it to second place.
You were in a great seat. You benefited. You exited in second place. What was your take on that?
Yeah, so we all went quite deep into the corner, and I think Sebastian locked up a bit, and then touched Valtteri, which is of course unfortunate. But at the end of the day, we're all humans, and those things can happen.
Have so much runoff as we do here at Bull River. Do you think the drivers were a little bit more aggressive in the race than they would be at other tracks?
I don't know. Lap one in general was a little bit of chaos, I think, but after that it was alright. I think.
We've had a few run-ins with Sebastian Vettel during the course of this year. This goes around, comes around. I mean, you saw that accident. Do you think a 5-second penalty was fair?
It's not up to me to decide it, but like I said, we're all humans and we make mistakes, even when you're 4-time world champion.
Tied with Kimi in the end, but tell us about your race.
Yeah, it was going okay actually. The first part of the race we were on a pit stop because I report.
Things on your computer, you need to get Grammarly.
I write pretty much all different everything, and Grammarly makes my writing better.
As a student, I like that it's working. Actually, it's correcting everything as I'm writing.
Grammar errors, spelling errors. It even helps me find the right words to use so I can say what I want to say.
It catches all those embarrassing mistakes.
I
really is like my secret weapon for writing papers.
It's the perfect tool for your resume. You don't want any errors with your first impression.
I use Grammarly for important emails, social media posts, which there are a lot of.
I've used every tool out there, and Grammarly is by far the best for writing. Grammarly is making me a better writer. It's free.
I would recommend Grammarly if you're a student,
family.
It's like having your own personal proofreader for free.
Download Grammarly for free at Grammarly.com.
Portugal's had some understeer quite a lot when we were going quite fast, and then we dropped off a lot of pace. So yeah, after the pit stop, we suffered more with understeer because the team couldn't fix it. They just saw it, and we went back out. And then a few laps later, the right part of the front wing broke as well. So in the end, we had a let's say very damaged car. And I obviously tried the best I could with Kimi, but with the car we had, there was not much chance in the end.
Did you feel like you got the most out of the car that you had today?
I think so. I mean, the first corner was a bit of a shamble, and I saw some cars go through the cut through and avoid the incident. And I don't know if anyone gained an advantage, but I think in the end, before the damage, we were fast. And I feared having more downforce today would have been not good for us, but had pretty good pace. So I'm still positive with the pace, and think we'll convert a podium the next two races.
Austria next, kind of your home race for your team. How do you feel?
I'm excited. I think first 3 in a row will be fun. So definitely have our sights set on a podium.
The race, you? Because you were so dominant.
For me, it's the start. Obviously, is an exciting part, but the fans watching, that was the most the climax. So it was a long, almost 2 hours ago. But no, for me, I saw the guys getting a big toe into turn one, and all I break late and deep, trying to keep this position. So all I can see is red in my mirrors. Made it through the corner, and then I saw some smoke. And I knew I was in the clear, but then I was sad to see Valtteri get taken out because he done such a great job through the weekend, and I think it looks like kind of a race incident, but avoidable, and 5 seconds doesn't seem like it's nothing at the end of the day. But it was a lot to Valtteri. He lost second place. It's a huge amount of points. That affects the championship. That affects the team's championship position. It's costly for us and not costly for him. So he points that it was just the racing, for us all racing. You shouldn't be able to take someone out and then finish ahead of them. You know what I mean? So whether it's 5, 10, whatever it is, if I was unfortunately away that, and then if I was Valtteri, I would be right in the race.
I'm a working mom with 2 teenagers. I'm a small business owner who was for other women and supported many women in their pursuits over the years. No do or how to think, how to live my life, or who to vote for, ever. I hold no allegiance to any other woman just because she's a woman. That's tribal. Stupid.
Hello and welcome to the Thursday Drivers' Press Conference ahead of the French Grand Prix. We are joined today by Romain Grosjean from Haas, Fernando Alonso from McLaren, Esteban Ocon from Force India, and Pierre Gasly from Toro Rosso. We're going to start with the French drivers. It's the first French Grand Prix for 10 years, and there's a real buzz in the paddock about being here in the south of France. So, how special is it for you?
Algae marbles. Amidst house the garrison. Trees and wood, their roots entwining the ancient forest. The east and west ends of the Parthenon were still partly standing, but almost everything else lay in pieces on the ground. In the 50 years before sculptures from the Acropolis, almost half of the sculptures had disappeared or been destroyed. As the story goes, Lord Elgin was appointed British minister to the port of Constantinople and became a favorite, allowed him to receive funds from his personal mosque, something otherwise unprecedented. When Elgin wished to remove some sculptures from the Acropolis, the sultans willingly granted this wish. Elgin then excavated the Acropolis and saved many of the Parthenon sculptures from destruction by bringing them to London. They entered the British Museum in a complex transaction that partly reimbursed his costs, and there they became known as the Elgin Marbles. There they are seen by millions, but became iconic and a household name less because they're great sculptures, but these sculptures are now the subject of one of the longest cultural rows in Europe. The Greeks have demanded that they be returned to their homeland. They were taken illegally during the country's Turkish occupation and should be returned for display in Athens. The Greek government has disputed the British Museum trustees' legal title to the sculptures, suggests that Lord Elgin bribed Turkish officials and effectively stole the marbles. The first serious discussion about returning the Elgin marbles is said to have been initiated in an exchange of correspondence in a newspaper in 1925, with Courtney Pollock arguing that the time was right to.
It's all about women are always heroes and men are always evil. We hear about man spreading. Well, men they open their legs too wide on the train. Every time I'm on the train, the woman next to me has her purses, plural, on the seat next to her because they spend 3 months' salary on their fucking handbags. They don't want to put it down on the dirty New York City ground.
To make the gesture towards Greece. Since then, the issue has been